I'm not able to share. I'm collecting my Facebook.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. I'm no qua, Osinachi. One man, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Mama, Osinachi. Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Osinachi. One man, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Mama, Osinachi. kéré o, wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa, àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Hey, Osinachi, Namukwa, Osinachi. One money, Osinachi, I'm watching. Hey, Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi.
Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Okay, you can hear me.
Good morning.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, we have 2 minutes, I think.
Excellent.
Good morning, everyone. I see you all.
Very good. I see you too.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm Professor Yeronke Oyewumi, and I am in New York. Okay.
Very good. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ivy Mills. I'm usually in Berkeley or Oakland, California, but I'm in Connecticut today, fortunately.
Hi, Ivy.
Moyo PDG. I'm in Accra, Ghana.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Hey, Osinachi.
Okay, we've been given the go-ahead. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you all. Yes. So let's get going on this. Let's start on time because we have a jam-packed session with all these renowned professors and academics and the author herself. We're looking forward to the engagement. So welcome all and welcome to the audience. This session is one of the author meets reviewer sessions. And this particular session is titled Engaging Bata Koko, a biography of Nike by Kofo Adeleke. This is the book. I wish I could have this behind me in a big poster, but that will be worked on. So we're going to be discussing this book. And as I said, we have a very renowned group of people, and we need to get on with it because our time is not a lot. So the procedure will follow presentations in the order in the program. And what I would do is that as each person comes on, I would introduce them. But my introduction is going to be very short because we need all the time that we can for discussing the book and getting responses from the author. And I'm hoping that Mama Nike is here. I don't see her, but I hope that at some point she might come. She's on the program. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Francine Kola-Bankole as the first presenter. Francine Kola-Bankole is a PhD student at the University of Birmingham in the UK. And she's a student in African Studies and Anthropology, studying gender in the arts of contemporary Nigeria. Her research interest with Nike Okundaye is longstanding. So, Francine, you have 8 minutes.
Wonderful. In full disclosure, I'm coming off of the flu, so I might last 7 minutes. And if you can hold up your hand at the 7-minute mark, that would be wonderful. Okay. One of the things that I find very fascinating about this book is that this biography presents a continuum of the career of Nike Okundaye that was first profiled by Kim Voss in 1995. As a researcher in gender in the arts of Nigeria, I have been studying this particular artist for a while now. And in full disclosure, I have both a personal and professional relationship with Nike Okundaye. I suggest that once in a lifetime, there emerges one person who will make an indelible impact within his or her community. This is why 2 books have been written about Dr. Monica Olufunmilayo Olenike Ojo Olaniyi Davis Okundaye. There is a distinct possibility that more shall be written. The crux of the book for me are the years between 1970s, the late 1970s through the 1990s. And the goal of my work is to contextualize the narratives of what and how this artist transitioned from a novice to a senior artist. This participation in this panel represents a continuation of my first LSA paper that I presented in 2019, where I posited my theory that Okundaye was more of a witness, not a participant. And that is based on the reality that women in Nigerian artists are usually invisible until they become viewed as a senior artist. And what Kofo does in this book is that she does confirm this reality. Most of the written narratives are written by men about men. So even if there is a mention of a female artist, it's more often as a support of the male artist genius. And rather than give a laundry list of the omissions by scholars contemporaries to the time frame of the 1970s to the 1990s, my work amplifies and contextualizes the contributions of women. But the one thing I must admit is that there was a fundamental change. And that change started in the late 1970s in the way Western art history began to change how art was classified. Textiles were no longer considered craft, but were considered as a major art form. However, women textile designers were still viewed often as craft workers, whereas male studio artists using Adeleke for wall art were viewed as geniuses. There is no denying of the historical nature of the Shobo school and the ways in which Nikkei Okandai is always attached to his legacies. The short review focuses on a particular role of events, the tradition that Okandai made for herself and the ways in which she established her voice. What I love about this book is that it is instrumental in the ways it lays the foundation for greater study as to how this artist's social activism is inextricably tied to the topics of gender equality and gender memory. And the further study must be made so it can be further impact. And the author has presented a rich history through many narratives, and she does provide a timeline of how each of Okandai's activisms are connected, from her first venture to create a place where women could learn to use art to escape poverty, to the way she took Italy on in the early 2000s through to the present day. I argue that Okandai has a thorough understanding of how to work within her community. And so what this book does is amplify who she collaborated with and why it was important for Dr. Okandai to use her existing social structures to negotiate her voice and develop her art. And my first theory is that she maintains collaborative relationships. How? Well, beginning with her years in Oshobo, she took the approach of smoothing out differences. And so whether it was in the household in Oshobo to careers with Tulawewe, she's forging relationships with major global art institutions. And she does understand that in many instances, she's the first female Nigerian artist appearing on the global stage. And the ties that Kofo Adeleke makes with Kim Boss's DeVille's book, I think are truly pretty powerful. And so that's where my study goes into in further detail. I'm not going to give away the jewels to my kingdom right now, but what I'm going to talk about right now is the years 1981 through 1984. To me, those are the watershed years. Why did she open her first art center? That was 1983. We have to understand that gender and feminism are viewed very differently in Nigeria during those timeframes than they are viewed outside Nigeria. And what Nikkei did is historic. She broke the mold. She negotiates her persona, both on a personal and public level. And that's what is coming out in this book. And so I argue that Dr. Okandai understands gender in place, not as an academic, but how it is particular to her life. So the first thing she does is that she understands the difference between the anonymous craft, where the collector does not learn the artist's name, and the artist collector will buy signed work. So in page
1 minute.
Okay, so in 1973, on page 63, Kofo mentioned that Nikkei started to disobey twins. She signed her work. That, I think, is really instrumental. She moves on and she starts the art center. Why? Because she wants women to be able to learn how to use art to become financially independent. I think my voice is running out. So I'm going to stop here because I know there are 5 other people who want to jump in and talk about how instrumental this book is in laying out the timelines of Dr. Nikkei Okandai.
Thank you for that, and right on time. So I look forward to everybody keeping time so that we can really have a good discussion. The next person on the program is Professor Kweju Laiwola, and I love that background.
Thank you.
So let me introduce Kweju, and she needs no introduction, but let's do it anyway. Kweju Laiwola is an artist and a professor of art history at the Department of Creative Arts, University of Lagos. A strong advocate for the return of looted art to Benin, Nigeria. Many of us know her through her exhibition, Indigo Reimagined, held at the University of Lagos in 2019. Yes, that was such a treat. Mama Nike did an artist spotlight of Laiwola's works from her personal collection in her gallery early this year. Laiwola is currently showing at the RJ Museum, Cole. Laiwola is the current president of the Art Council of the African Studies Association of the USA, ACASA. And very, very recently, ACASA was awarded $250,000 by the Mellon Foundation, all under the leadership of our dear Professor Kweju Laiwola. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Well, I will start by saying that there are many parts of the book that interest me. First of all, I like the cover photo on the book, which shows beautiful Nike smiling in a way that invites you to read the book. The same way she welcomes you to our ultra-modern gallery space with laughter, singing, and good food. Nike once told me she was threatened by using her name, Nike, which is sometimes confused with the international sports fashion brand, Nike. So with the diacritical marks on her name in the front cover, distinguishing the two names, I'd like us to see or view Nike as a worldwide phenomenon that has potentials to threaten an already well-known brand founded in 1964. So I've divided my intervention into three parts. The first part is titled Nike and Her Daughters. Nike has achieved a lot, but I think the enormity of her impact will be better appreciated in later years. She's one artist that has replicated herself in many people. But what is more interesting for me is how she has brought her children into the arts and how she has led them into propagating the arts in their own ways. Nike etches her daughters and their achievements into our consciousness through their photographs, which appear on posters, publications, and on her gallery buses. So as the buses move around Lagos and through the numerous stores around Nigeria or across Nigeria, we experience the power and strength of a continuing tradition. So of the four daughters, I've singled two of them out, Sheyi and Aino Allison, who are prominent within the art field. Sheyi, the oldest or the eldest of them, is a multi-talented artist, a phenomenal dancer and singer, a textile designer, painter, and mosaic artist based in Brooklyn, New York. She has carried out major artistic projects in New York, such as an art installation titled Up South by Harlem Needle Arts in 2020, and she's a recipient of the Brooklyn Arts Council grant, which funded an art project titled Heal Our Land. And she got yet another grant from the Artist Core Grant for Creative Artistic Engagement. And she combines the skills of her father, Twin 77, and Nike, and she says, and I quote, "I hope to continue carrying on my parents' legacies by building on their excellent works in my capacity through my company, Sheyi Arts Culture and Tours, nurturing middle to high school students in artistic engagements," end of quote. The other daughter, Allison, I know, who appears more visible in Nigeria, assists with the administration of the Nike Arts Gallery and regularly mans the gallery stands at major art events and fairs. And she produced a book on Adire patterns and storytelling. And she's well known for her contemporary application of Adire onto women's leggings. I know runs a teaching platform known as Olori Art Foundation, passing on skills to people interested in learning the arts. On the other hand, what seems to be present in terms of reference to Nike's nuclear family is absent when we read this book. we cannot but notice the contrast between the invisibility of Nike's forebears and the visibility of her children, yet we learn of the impact of her father, her mother, and her great-grandmother. But there's a sense in which without a visual recall or image of these very important people in her life, we may not remember them for very long. The second part is titled Batik and its early applications in Southwest Nigeria. And I've been interested in learning how Batik became entrenched as a textile process in Nigeria, given that Adeleke or starch resist was the predominant method of resist dyeing in places like Oshogbo, Abeokuta, or Ibadan. Today, along with tie-dye or Adire Oniko, Batik or Adire Alabella is very popular amongst textile designers. Indeed, some of the old Adire Eleko patterns are being translated into Batik patterns. Musa Kone tells us that the Austrian painter and artist Susa Wenger expanded on her range of artistic media to incorporate Batik in 1955. Nike will have been just 3 years old at that time, and Wenger had suffered a severe ailment and turned to Batik, which offered her a limited color palette. For her, Adire Alabella did not require the sort of, Adire Alabella did not require the sort of solitude that the painting on canvas offered. So while Susan may have introduced Batik in the mid-1950s in Oshogbo, British artist Georgina Bayer conducted her first workshop in 1964, a year after arriving in Oshogbo. She left Nigeria with Uli Bayer in 1966, but returned again, this time to Ife in 1971, where she organized art workshops, particularly on Batik, for the junior staff members of the university, including gardeners, clerks, and domestic servants within the university community. I find Nike's entry into Batik sometime in between these periods, aided by her association with Twin 77, who was tutored by Susa Wenger. Nike also says that Batik is a technique she accidentally discovered. So in conclusion, I titled this last part, One Indigo Tree Cannot Make a Forest. The author has very beautifully captured Nike's great achievements and how she had spent her entire career trying to revive vegetal dyeing using indigo. Today, 99% of the products used for making Adire or tie and dye or Batik, whatever you want to call it, are imported. The cotton comes from China, from Europe, and anywhere else. The waxes, the dyes, fixatives are imported from Germany and China as well. So what we practically do with all of these materials when they arrive in Nigeria is to apply the colors onto the fabric. So if China decides not to send yarns or threads to Nigeria, the weavers of Ashoke is saying we have no more work to do. The wider questions for us will be, how can we evolve a sustainable homegrown textile and fashion industry in Nigeria to return to the era of hectares and fields of indigo and cotton plants? How can we return to the glorious past of hand-spun, hand-gin, hand-woven Benin cloth that was very well sought after by European traders in the 16th century? So when Adeleke mentions the missed opportunity to tap into the knowledge Nike has in terms of restoring the planting of indigo on a large scale, these are the questions that come to mind. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Pejulaiwola. You've put a lot on our plate. And I hope that we'll have time for different people to speak to many of the issues that different presenters are raising. Now, the third person on the panel is Ivy Mills. Ivy Mills is a continuing lecturer in UC Berkeley's History of Art department. And I'm saying UC Berkeley because it's my old school. So I said, oh, okay. Where she teaches courses on the arts and visual cultures of Africa and the African diaspora. Welcome, Ivy Mills, and please take the floor.
Thank you so much. And I'd appreciate a reminder at the 7-minute mark.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm so very honored to be among you, and I thank the LSA for including me on this panel. I also want to extend my thanks to Kofo Adeleke, the author of this incredibly rich biography. I feel like I have learned so much from it, and I see it as an important contribution that art historians and scholars of Nigerian cultural studies alike will find very valuable. And before I start, I wanted to, since we've just been talking about Berkeley, I want to make the case for seeing Berkeley as a key node in Nike's global network, even though it is many thousands of miles away from Nigeria. She was an artist in residence at UC Berkeley in 2004 when I was a graduate student. Unfortunately, we did not cross paths at the time because I was conducting research in Dakar. But when I took graduate students to Lagos in spring 2019, and we visited Nike's gallery, it was not planned. I had not called in advance. We didn't know exactly when we were going to come. Our bus arrives, we come out, and there is this amazing dance performance happening in front of the gallery. And the students, Nike is there, the dancers are there, the dancers welcome the students into the dance circle. And it was this incredible moment in which, the students felt like that welcome, that amazing welcome had been prepared for them. And then when Nike heard that we were coming from Berkeley, she welcomed us incredibly warmly and talked about her time there. And at some point, I would like to know more about how that residency impacted her and also impacted Berkeley. I think it's mentioned in the biography, but not at any great length. So there are 3 threads actually that time permitting, I'd like to pull out from this biography and that I think speak to kind of important and interesting dynamics, particularly in Lagos today, since this is the Lagos Studies Association. I wanted to think about Nike's story and her legacy in relation to contemporary Lagos. The first thing that really struck me, and that's been touched on already by Francine, is how we see Nike develop as a kind of master of marketing and self-promotion. And we get this amazing sense of the development of what the kids today call her brand. And, we see how she went from not being allowed to sign her name on works claimed by her then husband, Twin 77, to becoming this internationally known icon, known around the world, and known by her abbreviated first name, right? And Dr. Laiwola just mentioned this in its association perhaps with the Nike brand. But I sort of see this as, similar to Fela or Madonna, right? People who are known just by that short first name and who do not need any additional information to identify them. And so there are some interesting details in the biography I wanted to pull out. So for example, and this is something that Francine talked about already on pages 174, 175, when she opened the Nike Center for Art and Culture in Osogbo in the early 1980s. At the time, she wanted to call it Osogbo Artists Cooperative, right? And so there, her name was not part of the title. The emphasis was very much on the cooperative. The cooperative itself was founded in order to train other women. And so it really wasn't necessarily about her. But at the time, Uli Bayer urged her to use her name in the name of the center. And so I thought that was kind of interesting moment, because at times we see Nike herself making decisions that will sort of help, again, develop this kind of brand associated with her. And then at other times we see her being advised. And in this case, we could see it as really fantastic advice. And also, I think too, what comes out from this account of how she develops her persona and how she develops her brand as not having the ultimate goal of simple self-aggrandizement, of improving her own status, and of accumulating wealth and fame. Instead, it's put very much in the service of these, many incredible programs and initiatives that support and help other people, right? So that's I think a really important dynamic that emerges. And so it's interesting to think about this kind of self-promotion in relation to a kind of aggressive culture of self-promotion that we see in big cities like Lagos, where, you know, in a city of many millions of people, people are trying to make their mark. There are posters made with people's images on them, which is really sort of with the goal of improving the status of the individual. And so to think of this as being in the service of something greater, I think is really interesting.
You have 1 minute.
Oh, already? Okay. And then actually, so to conclude this thread, something that is not included in the biography that I'm really interested in is Nike's social media presence today. I think that this, and it's possible that because this is such a recent development, you didn't have time to put it in the biography, but I follow her on social media, and I'm very, very struck by the frequency of the posts, how there are photos that are posted of Nike welcoming people from all over the world, from all over Lagos, Nigeria, and that they get posted almost daily. And it serves as this very interesting archive of the network that Nike continues to build. So thank you very much. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure we'll have time to return to some of these things that you may not have had a chance to talk about yet, but I hope as people are keeping to time that we'll be able to have some dialogue. The fourth presenter is none other than the renowned artist and Professor Moyo Okediji, who is professor in the Department of Art and Art History at the University of Texas at Austin. He doesn't need much more introduction than that. He is a renowned painter and artist. Professor Okediji, it's your turn.
Thank you very much for your introduction, and I really appreciate the way in which Professor Layiwola began by describing the cover of this book, and the way in which there's an attempt to present Nike differently from Nike. But when you really look at the way Nike is written, you will see how her name defies orthography, because there are critics that have been placed on the name says Nike, not Nike, because usually we have single strokes for diacritics, and it will require 2 E's to really write Nike correctly, or do the very unconventional thing and place a V on the last vowel. So even the name itself defies writing, just like how work defies any easy analysis, because it is so multi-dimensional and so rich in terms of the layering. But today, I would like to look at the creative coupling in the book by Kofo Adeleke. And this is in terms of the collaboration between Nike 277 and Tola Wewe. I know the 3 of them very well. I have collaborated in some ways with each of them. And collaborative work is a fascinating theme in Kofo Adeleke's biography of Nike Okundaye. Adeleke mentions two forms of collaborations among artists in her book. The first entails collaborating among artists who are couples in romantic relationships as domestic partners. The second entails artists who collaborate as professional friends. The first example, that is artists collaborating as domestic partners, Adeleke cites examples from Western traditions, including Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo, Lee Krasner and Jackson Pollock, Man Ray and Lee Miller, Pablo Picasso and Francois Gillot, and Barbara Epworth and Ben Nicholson. Adeleke describes them as, quote, famous, iconic couples from the world of art with equally fascinating stories bound together in a shared world of innovations and collaborations where each inspired and influenced the other, end quote. Adeleke further remarks that, quote, artists tend to operate in a different dimension, which can produce a lot of drama in their personal lives. From her selection of quote unquote art couples, Adeleke highlights the volatility, tension, and dysfunctionality that might attend such collaborations. All her examples are from heterosexual relationships. Adeleke made this compilation of art couples as a way to prepare her readers for the collaborations between Nike's first husband, twins 77 Olaniyi, and Nike, a collaboration that lasted for about 2 decades over the entire lifespan of the marriage. Adeleke opines that, quote, twins and Nike definitely deserve to be mentioned within this orbit. They share the characteristic of influence, creative collaboration, and tempestuous volatility, and also enduring, unbreakable bonds, end quote. Unlike the relationship between 77 and Nike, the domestic interactions between the European artists that Adeleke cites are in monogamous settings. 77 and Nike operated, however, in a polygamous setting involving no less than 7 other regular wives and a numberless array of what is known in Nigeria as side chicks. Adeleke describes the monogamous phase of this coupling in romantic terms, suggesting a dominant male and a submissive female partner. Readers might leave the book with the impression that the monogamous phase of the Nike and 77 collaboration consisted of an exploitative relationship between the two domestic players. Perhaps this unequal equilibrium context is inevitable because it was a relationship in which 77 and Nike functioned in a studio dynamic of the master and the apprentice. 77 was the teacher who taught Nike how to paint in the international style that he invented as one of the leading artists and pioneers of the Osogbo Art School, which emerged in the 60s in the Western Nigerian region, a city that is the capital of Osun State today. After 77 married other wives, these new wives also studied under him as apprentices. Adeleke, however, described these wives, including Nike, as, quote, collaborators. Adeleke writes, and I quote, quite a significant amount of the output from twins right up to the early 80s were collaborative. It was never a secret that his wives helped to color in his artwork. As the most talented, Nike was a principal contributor. His frequent method of operation involved drawing the outline and getting other people to fill it in, and then he would sign it. As Adeleke admits, the use of assistants by master artists is an age-long tradition, not only in Western art, but all over the world, including indigenous practices. Studio assistants cannot be equated with collaborators. They do exactly what their masters instruct them to do, and the experience of the artist is part of a learning process. In some instances, the assistant could even be artists in their own rights, employed by another artist to assist in the accomplishing of specific tasks. When Lamidi Fakaye was carving the monumental sculpture that he titled Odudua at the campus of the Obafemi Awolowo University, he employed other master carvers who assisted him to accomplish the detailing on the work. Fakaye blocked out the entire piece and gave form to the holistic vision of the composition. He then instructed his paid assistants on what he wanted them to do with the details. Those assistants cannot be regarded as collaborators. At the beginning, at the risk of sounding blunt, one may describe the role of the assistant here as good and powerful tools that the master uses in their creative processes. Adeleke might therefore want to reconsider a designation of Nike as a collaborator with 77, as long as he functions essentially as his assistant working on compositions that 77 conceived and produced, deploying her as an instrument of studio production. There is a remarkable shift, however, when we consider the relationship between Nike and Talawewe, which resulted in the production of works that may be described as a true collaboration between the male and female artists. In the story that Adeleke tells in the book, the idea of the collaboration evolved organically. Talawewe gave Nike some miniature paintings to sell. Wewe's miniatures tend to be sketchy with scant details, though
You have 1 minute.
Though they nevertheless exhibit powerful formal qualities. One day, Nike was gazing at one of these miniatures that Wewe asked her to sell and saw an opportunity for her to add detail to the work. Of her own volition, and without asking for Wewe's consent or commission, she added decorative details to the works as embellishments. Using the patterns, rhythms, and colors that she would normally use on her own original compositions. So to close, we need to distinguish between the works that Nike did with 77 and the works that she did with Talawewe. The ones with 77 could really be described as coming and belonging to the genius of 277 and could not be pronounced as collaboration. But the ongoing collaboration with Talawewe is the true collaboration between two artists. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that presentation. And I have to admit that it clarified something for me since I'm not a creative artist. Because when I read the part as to how Nike started working on Talawewe's sketches, I didn't understand why it suddenly dawned on Nike that she could do that. So, but now you've explained something that Talawewe's paintings were not that detailed.
Miniatures.
Okay, So anyway, we'll have time for more discussion and more learning for those of us who are not even novices. Thank you for that. And we'll have the fifth presenter. I think we're doing well on time. I'm happy about that. Oh my, the fifth presenter. Okay. The fifth presenter is Kim Vasdeville. I hope I'm correct with that pronunciation. She's from Xavier University in Louisiana. Kim is a professor of education at Xavier University of Louisiana. She met Nike in 1986 when she was in Nigeria to work on her dissertation. Out of that meeting came a collaborative project, that word again, to publish Nike's oral history. The book, The Woman with the Artistic Brush, A Life History of Yoruba Batik artist Nike Davis, was published through a special series called Other Legacies, edited by historian Geraldine Forbes. Kim, it's your turn.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I enjoyed all the presentations. I'm grateful to LSA for the invitation, and I'm grateful for our moderator. When I met Nike, I was doing another project, and someone said, you should go to Nike. She makes batiks. And I was like, what? And she's interested, like in women, women's like and so I drove out there because I was at Ife. And, when she got there, she said, oh, yes, I've heard that you're interested in women's rights. And we were off to the races at that point. Innovators provide solutions to problems. And the inspired life of Nike demonstrates that poverty, which affects almost 86 million people in Nigeria, sometimes is addressed by one person who finds a way out, but returns to show others the way. The life of Nike demonstrates how one person creates such a solution in her time and in her place. She's been quoted as saying, I see training people in Adeleke as a way of saving the art. So it's not just something our grandmothers once did. I also think of it as a means of solving poverty. People who have no means of livelihood can be taught Adeleke to make a living for themselves. The late Nigerian musician Fela Kuti famously is quoted as having said, 99% of the information you get about Africa is wrong. The biography is a corrective of this. The biography of Nike by Adeleke is the corrective of this. Adeleke offers a sweeping overview of the career of the Nigerian artist Nike, whose fame is so secure, she's never confused with the multinational corporation Nike, whose name bears the same spelling, as we've all noted. Adeleke's biography situates Nike as a decisive actor in the artistic organizations traversing Africa, Europe, Canada, and the United States. The biography places Nike's art within a transnational dialogue as a visual language conversing with diverse cultural practices that derive from and respond to contemporary discourses and circumstances. An asset of Adeleke's book is that she presents the economic and social arrangements of the world in which Nike began her life, and then of the challenge of the various artist worlds she made her way into, such as a traveling theater and then the Oshogbo School. The reader can be absorbed in the now long ago age of Nigerian life at mid-century. Adeleke makes the linkages between Nike's life experiences and the themes that preoccupy her. I'm especially interested in Nike's engagement with critical feminist ideas about the value and dignity of womanhood as poor women struggle with maternity, sexual violence, and domestic labor. The very idea of the Nike Center for Art and Culture was to teach young women something that could transform their lives. I liked that the book was written in an engaging and conversational fashion, which is enticing to a general audience. I also felt that the narrative was propulsive and that the reader was forging ahead along with Nikei's rise in self-confidence and fame. So it holds the reader's attention. The biography amplifies Nikei's major traits as a social unifier, a cutting-edge artist, and a fashion designer, as well as a business guru. And so as I was thinking about the art of biography and how one, goes about writing biography, I came up with some specific questions for you, Ms. Kofo. And those are, were there ways in which Nikei's stories resonated with your own? Another one was, you wrote so much about Nikei's first marriage, more than about her second or third. And why is that? And how did you determine how much to reveal or not reveal? Do you have a philosophy that guided you in that? You also talked about her daughters, and I really love the way that that was brought out about her daughters, are moving images around the country. But you did not include their thoughts about their mother in the book. And I wanted to know, was that deliberate? Because sometimes people like to hold their stories for other things that they're doing. And the last thing is, I remember hearing Nikei, I remember other artists talking about that accidental discovery of the use of wax spilling in the night on the cloth. I heard that from several artists. And there seems to be a shared origin story of that particular technique. I was surprised to see it resurface in Nikei's narrative at this stage of her career. So I wonder what you think about this desire to be identified with a profound innovation in the artist's world of Adeleke production. And I'll just stop there.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for that. And you have many questions on the plate for the author. So what I propose to do now, Mr. Olayebi should join us at some point. I hope he will be able to. That's the publisher. But meanwhile, it's the turn of the author to respond to some of these questions, to tell us how she came about writing this book. And I am particularly interested in the title, how she came by that title and why she chose that title. So without further ado, I'm going to give the author, I had said 20 minutes, but maybe we can do it in like 2 installments. Maybe she can do 10 minutes, and then if people want to chime in, and then she'll have some more time for that. Whatever works, I just want us to talk to each other and to speak to some of the many wonderful issues that each presenter has raised. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And first of all, I just want to thank everybody, because this is truly a very distinguished panel. And I feel quite humbled that you've all taken the time to read the book and review it and make comments. And I'm really, really grateful for that. Thank you so much. And also, before I start, I just want to quickly say something to Professor Oyewumi. When I told my husband that I was doing this today, he was so excited because he said that he was your classmate at UI. So, I mean, that's something else that we can talk about maybe later.
Yes, we should be.
Yeah, but okay.
And he's Adeleke, right?
Adeleke.
Okay, good.
Right.
That's not your name, that's his name. Okay, and now your name. I'm just trying to make sure. Okay.
So anyway, before I sort of go through all the comments the panelists have made, I will sort of answer the questions that you've just raised. First of all, about how the book came about. I've known Mama Nikei for close to 40 years now. And we've been friends, and I think it also explains in the book how I sort of first met her. And, out of the blue, I was attending one of her, she had an event in the gallery, and, I went there, with drumming, dancing, we were enjoying and everything. And then as I was walking out to say goodbye to her, she just called me over and she said that she'd like me to write her story. And, I went home and I was quite stunned, really. It took a while for it to thinking that she'd actually asked me to do it. And but you know, I was absolutely thrilled. The title of the book. Well, I mean, we were looking for a title, and Bata Koko is the I think it's the title of maybe the second or third chapter, because I wanted that really to reflect her childhood and, you know, sort of growing up, because, you know, I also remembered, you know, how when I was young, my grandmother, when she used to see us dressing up and going to school, she used to sing that song to us. And so that was my first, my first sort of understanding of the meaning of the song. And I think, you know, when I was thinking about the song, I mean, it's quite deep, you know, the meaning of the song is deep. I mean, it's all about aspiration. It's all about trying to pull yourself up. And I think it's actually a brilliant song. And I was even trying to find out who was actually the actual author of the song, but it wasn't really possible. But, you know, it's all over the internet anyway. So anyway, I will first of all sort of start with Miss Francine and, you know, the what she was saying about, one of the things that I sort of picked up about what she said was that when she became a senior artist, she sort of began to get much more respect. But one of the things that, you know, I actually found that even now, I find that she gets left out. I mean, there are some books and, you know, articles written by artists talking about, you know, Nigerian artists, and, you know, and she's left out, and she's not really given enough space in those books. And it does sort of, I think it sort of riles me in a way, that I still feel that even today, when people are writing about African artists, Nigerian artists, she's not really given the space that she deserves. So I think that is still an issue, because I think that when it comes to, you know, the people who write art history, the people who curate exhibitions, they control the narrative.
Right.
And I think, you know, it's a good thing now that she, you know, puts on her own exhibitions and she has that power to do that. But when it comes to writing art history, I mean, you can look at, you know, I mean, I'm not an art critic, I'm not an art historian, but, you know, when you look at the people who are still sort of in that area, you know, when, I mean, whether we have enough women who are writing, you know, books on art history, enough Africans, Nigerians, you know, there's so much work to be done. In fact, I was actually quite inspired by Pat Oyelola, because she's written a book on art, and she just said more Nigerians need to write about art in Nigeria. And so, yeah, and I think also one of the things which I think you also picked up on was, you know, the amount of contacts she has. I mean, as I said, I'd known her for so many years, but her network is absolutely astounding. And how somebody from such humble beginnings could have the power to have such a wide and powerful network. And it is that network that has really done wonders from her. And she really knows how to cultivate that. And that's something really that all of us can learn from. It's quite amazing. So, yeah, well, I was just so happy to see Professor Laiwola, because, you know, we have interacted, and, you know, she's a wonderful person, and, you know,
and I have to say, Mama Nike has joined us.
Oh,
Ekabo. Okay, Ekabo. Good to see your face. Okay, let the author continue, and then you will join in at some point.
And,
all right.
Okay.
So I think one of the things that you said that you feel that, you know, Mama Nike, her appreciation is going to continue to grow even more in future years. And I think that when I was sort of writing the book, that is also something that I also felt, because I mean, okay, I tried to sort of, you know, the book was sort of tried to interpret things. I mean, sort of also being thematic, but also retrospective, but also at the same time, you know, I think proleptic, you know, an indication of what is going to happen in the future. And I think that is also part of the power of Mama Nike, that she is really very much ahead of her time. And I think from what some of the things that she's doing now is sort of us it's like foreshadowing what is actually going to come in the future. And yeah, I mean, I think, I think you mentioned, you picked out Shay and I know in particular, and, they have done wonderful things, which I have mentioned. And I was able to interview all of Mama Nike's children for the book. And, it was, one of the things when you were talking about sort of the art of biography and writing, it was a wonderful experience because, they were also open, all of them, totally open in terms of answering any questions I wanted. Everything was made available to me. I mean, I was so fortunate. I was very, very, very fortunate in that respect. And also you mentioned, which is another very, very important point, when you mentioned about indigo and the fact that, we really don't have land anymore for planting indigo and things like that. And all of the, we are reliant on synthetic materials and things like that. And one of the things I actually tried to do, because I think there were some Lebanese at one point who were trying to do some work with silkworms, because, with Soyon, that is sort of, silkworms that, sort of produce that. And I think that sometimes there's some Lebanese were trying to set up something like that to cultivate, more of the silkworms, but I couldn't actually contact them in Ibadan to find out how far they went with it. But we are losing so much. And also what I also found with the research was that more people outside of Nigeria are now interested in indigo cultivation and are coming to ask questions in Nigeria about what they can do. So we, again, are probably going to lose out because, people in foreign countries, especially in America, very, very interested in, bringing sort of these techniques. And so, we are really going to be losing out. And we really need to sort of revisit, sort of this area of, making sure that we have land to cultivate these things that we are going to need, because very soon we'll just find that it's just going to be so difficult. So I think I will sort of go on to Ivy Mills. I think you mentioned Lagos, which was very interesting because, Mama Nike is now situated in Lagos and she has become such a big figure in Lagos now. And yes, I mean, I would say that, Lagos culture has had an influence on her, because, there was a time when a lot of her work was sort of very much focused on the sort of rural life. But, if you see the kind of artwork that she's doing now, you can see the cosmopolitan influence. But also, you sort of mentioned her self-promotion and her branding. I mean, that is also something that I didn't really touch on in the book, which is, I think is interesting that you brought it up, because, the big corporations understand that she is a very big brand in herself, and they are always, beating a rapid path to her door for that. And, for example, she is really the #1 tourist spot in Nigeria. And I think this is another thing where people are not, the Nigerian government has not really keyed into this at all and doesn't really understand that she is such a big pull. I mean, she is #1 in terms of the tourist destination in Nigeria. She's #1, but really she's not. I still feel that Lagos state government, the federal government are still not really recognizing that, and they are losing. They're not tapping in. I mean, the corporate organizations, they recognize it because they're always beating a path to her door, asking her to do this and that. So yes, I think it's interesting you talk about the branding and sort of being in Lagos and all of that. And also, again, you mentioned social media, Facebook, and the way that is used. And it's it has a life of its own because people just post when people visit there. There's a lot of people say, oh, Mama Nike doesn't charge people for going into her gallery. But one thing Mama Nike does, she always sees the bigger picture. She just has that wonderful sort of intelligence, sees the bigger picture. And the kind of publicity that she gets for allowing people to come in, posting all their information on Facebook and other matters, it really is helping her brand in a big way. And, you know, it's just wonderful the way that she thinks in a way that she's always so far ahead in terms of her thinking. And yeah, I think that is an interesting point that you raised, and it's very, very important. Okay, so I'm going to go on now to comment on Professor Moyo. And I think a lot of people have said that, mentioned her name Nike and not being confused with Nike, the brand. But interestingly, I think Nike, the brand, got their name from a goddess. I think it was, I don't know, it was a Greek goddess. And the Greek goddess, Nike, means victory. And I think if anybody symbolizes, you know, or embodies victory, it is definitely Mama Nike. So, you know, there's still sort of a little link there between the two. And anyway, to go on to the main point that you were talking about, the artistic couples. I mean, one of the main reasons why I actually brought up these artistic couples, because when I was doing some research, I just saw there was a big exhibition in London about famous artistic couples, and not a single Asian or African was there. And, you know, I'm sure that even if they could have attempted to do a little bit of research, they would have found that in Asia and Africa, you find the same kind of couples collaborating and working together. Now, so more books are needed so that people are aware that, you know, it's not just all in Europe or South America and places like that. Now, the other thing you mentioned, I don't think I did actually say that, you know, that there was concentrate on their relationship, twins and Mama Nike's relationship being monogamous from the beginning, because it wasn't. I don't think I really mentioned that. But you spoke about the master and apprentice. Now, one of the things is that when you say that, okay, she was there to learn from twins, people forget that when Mama Nike went to Oshogo, she came with a lot of skills. She had already information about weaving, indigo dyeing, embroidery. She brought a lot to Oshogo. It was not sort of like a one-way street at all. It was sort of both ways. And so that's why I would like to call it a collaboration. And I know that when you talk about you know, apprentices and the use of apprentices, I mean, that could be a whole book in itself to talk about how that works. And there are lots of interesting stories there. I mean, that's a whole book in itself. But, you know, I think that people really do underestimate what Nike actually brought with her when she arrived. So I think it worked really both ways. And I think that's why, you know, I just really feel, I wouldn't feel comfortable sort of saying that she was sort of twins sort of apprentice or just an assistant. She was much more than that. She actually brought a lot to his activities. I mean, she was a dancer. She had so many things that helped him in so many ways, and he recognized that. I mean, if you read some of the books that have been written about him, he does actually pay tribute to her in this way. And then let me, if there's time before you want to have, I was just going to...
Why don't we, Mama Nike, I wanted Mama Nike to say something, whatever she wants to say, and then we'll have more time to come back to the questions or have people pose more questions to each other and that. Mama Ekabo, it's your turn now. Everybody's been talking about one thing or the other, and feel free to talk for a few minutes about whatever aspects you want to talk about the book. We're appreciating the beautiful picture.
Okay, I want to thank all of you for supporting the female artists. As you know, I think some of my big problem is when all the Oshogo artists, including their teacher, all of them, that is Susan Koko. So there is one exhibition we did in Lagos. Then the F want to sponsor us to go to France. They said there is no female artist in Osogbo. Then I was telling them, I said their teacher, Georgina Baya, is a woman. Mama Susan is a woman, and they are the one who really started the art in Osogbo, because there is Osogbo artists, but they don't discover themselves. And this thing keep us behind, because whenever they mention artists in Nigeria, they always put women behind. And that is the main reason when I have a breakthrough to go to America. That is why I said, I will open a gallery where I will be showcasing more of the female. And I'm very, very happy that Pejula Yola is also supporting as a lecturer, as a professor. They are my pride. And you people as a professor, as a female, you also try to let them know that women, whenever they come, they will say, oh, this work is the first exhibition we did for Peju Alatise here. They come, they say, oh, this work is not bad for a woman. Actually, the work is excellent. And we work hard day and night just to be known as part of them as a female artist. That is why we started the FIAN as Female Association Artists of Nigeria. And the younger one with the education like Ngozi, Akande, Chelsea. So they are all pushing it for people to be. So every 8th of March, we are creating awareness for female artists, and I give them the space to be doing the exhibition in the gallery. I want to thank you people for making it possible. There is my brother there. He's also teaching something about women. That is Moyo. So we thank you people for creating awareness for female artists. It's time for us to rise. And then the exhibition we are doing in Washington, D.C. now, we have 10 female Nigerian artists, while the other 10 is from 53 countries. So Nigerian women are pushing it there, but through the help of you people, because without you, the professor who push forward for us to be known, nobody will really know that there is female artists. They always say they do craft work. I thank you for your effort. And I know as far as you are there, you people are there for us. The last Akasa that you did in Lagos, that also brings awareness to Osogbo people. They now give me a doctorate degree. So I thank you people for making it possible, because even in between that, they put all the name of the other artists, and then my name come forward. So I thank you for making it possible for us to be known as a female artist, for us to be known as a renowned and international artist. Thank you so much for your love. And thank you, thank you, thank you.
Mama Nike, as usual, in your humility, we thank you for being, and as I always say, Her Royal Majesty, Her Royal Highness. And one of the things I was thinking about as I read Kofo Adeleke's book is that, you know, I've said this before and I'll say it again. One of the times I went to Mama Nike's palace, I want to call it palace, more recently, when I walked into that courtyard, what it reminded me of was an Oba's palace. And Kofo Adeleke must know something about this. Your husband just introduced you to me as that you're a princess. And when I say an Oba's palace, I remember that there's always a lot of activity, people dancing, people eating, people moving around. And it just struck me that at one level, I regard Mama Nike as an Oba in her own right, especially also because of those wonderful hairpieces, they call them gele. But many of them are crowns. but I don't want to talk too much here. I have not seen the publisher, Mr. Olayepi. So we have time for people to pose questions to each other and questions to the author, or if there's something burning in your mind that you need to talk about, I believe we have at least 20 minutes to do that. So let me see your hands. I don't want to be the only one posing questions. I could.
But what I was going to suggest was that, because when I was sort of going through all of the panelists' comments, I didn't actually get to Professor Vaz. So maybe I could just quickly sort of address some of the things that she wrote. First of all, I would just like to say that it's just really wonderful to actually meet you, after sort of reading your book many, many years ago. And yes, your book was really the very first book on Mama Nike. And, I'm hoping that, along with mine, there will be, and yours, there'll be many more to come, because, when I was writing the book, I just felt that the 10 chapters, and each chapter could easily be turned into a book, because there was just so much information and so much material. And you were sort of asking about whether you felt that there was anything in my own story that sort of resonated, sort of links and things like that. I mean, I must say, I haven't thought too deeply about that. But one of the things that I think, I have learned so much. It's been a journey for me. It's been a privilege to actually be part of Mama Nike's network and meet the people and become friends with her own friends and things like that. But also what's really important for me is that I'm somehow getting sort of much more of an insight into our pre-colonial history, which I think is so important. And I think that she's managed to do that in two ways. First of all, through textile art. Through researching textile art, we can learn more about our pre-colonial history. And I think that is so important. And also, Mama Nike has, in her early days especially, she sort of did a lot of artwork around the Oshun goddess and things like that. And that's all pre-colonial. And so she's providing these records. And that is what we really, really need to start bringing up. So many people just don't want, even Nigerians don't want to go close to pre-colonial history. And I think that is something that she has really, is really good for me and has made me feel that I want to do more research into some of these areas. You mentioned, whether I sort of spent a lot of time on her relationship with twins and not, I think I did, I interviewed, I wasn't able to interview twins because he's no longer with us, but I did interview her second husband and also her present husband. And, all of them were very, very open. But you see, obviously everybody was very open and, I could have written lots and lots and lots of things. But I think that, in some cases, I think some stories should be left for other people to write as well. And so I think that, I feel that there are lots of other angles and dimensions that could come out of this. And, I think that, some of the children are still, fairly young. And, and I think there's a lot more that could actually come out of that. Yeah, I think the other question you mentioned was sort of about innovation and Adire. Sorry, could you remind me? I think I've sort of lost it a little bit. I think the last thing you mentioned was about innovation on Adire.
Yeah, that story about the candle wax falling onto the cloth. Yes. I'm sure I see head nods. So I see that people understand that they maybe that's, there are founding myths in all of these, people generated, customs and practices. And I think that's one of them. And I'm just wondering if you also came across other people saying that, because that just struck me. It still stayed with me after all these years, because when, I heard it, from different people, and it seems to be such a signal achievement, going from the cassava to the wax, and people wanting to claim authorship of that. So I was just wondering about that.
Well, you never know. You never know, really, because I think in those days people were using candles a lot. And so it's quite possible that candles were dripping everywhere. And so people it came up like that for a lot of people. But yeah, when it comes to, you're talking about how things started. For example, with the Tolawewe story, I think, when I spoke to Mama Nike about how the collaboration started, she told me her own version of how it started. When I spoke to Tolawewe himself, he said, well, this is my version. It might be different, but it's never going to be, nobody's ever going to say, oh, this is exactly how it happened, And also, I think, Professor Oyewumi was mentioned about we talk about the miniatures. What it was, when he's first of all he started off by doing some small miniatures, and that he was selling them that way. In fact, I haven't even seen those miniatures, so I'd love to see one of those miniatures. But no, it wasn't just that his work was uncompleted or anything like that. He had completed the work, but Mama Nike felt that she could add another dimension. And my gosh, it just became such people were so excited about it that from then on, for several years, they started to work together. So it wasn't that, what he had done at that point was somehow uncompleted, not at all. And, I think I do write quite extensively about how he felt about working with her and how she felt about working with him. And, it was really, a beautiful collaboration.
Well, I'm glad to say I have acquired one of their pieces, Tolawewe and Mama Nike. And before we go further, I'm glad you mentioned what you call pre-colonial that she brings to the table. But I want to say that it is actually at one level problematic to regard Yoruba spirituality as pre-colonial and something that people have forgotten about. This is what people live with and live in. Not everybody is a Christian, Muslim, or what have you. So these things are not passé. They are not part of the past. They are about people's everyday lives and spirituality. So we cannot just reduce it to pre-colonial. I think that that aspect needs to be appreciated, that aspect of the spirituality and how central it is to people's lives. And I want to say, especially artists.
Yes, if I could just come back there. I'm very, very grateful to artists, because I think that a lot of things that are not out there that people don't want to talk about, it is artists that are actually putting it out there, and artists are doing a wonderful job in
Well, the question is which people don't want to talk
you see, the thing is,
it's about the circles we move in.
Well,
because there are also a lot of places where this is just their life.
Well,
this is life.
Yes, but I think, I always, I remember somebody told me a long time ago that Christianity and Islam are two very recent visitors to Nigeria. And recent visitors to Nigeria, but they really is really dominant in Nigeria nowadays. And sometimes if you mention anything to do with traditional religion, people start either opening their eyes or laughing in shock. That is the experience living in Nigeria that I get all the time. People just do not want to talk about traditional religion. People do not want to go back. It's all ever since, Christianity and Islam came, and, it has really shut down a lot of things. But I am really grateful that artists are incorporating so many things into their work. And so we are able to start having these conversations. It is a very delicate area in Nigeria, seriously.
Does Peju or Professor Okedi, did you want to speak to that in any way?
I would say that you actually already have said everything by saying that it depends on which group of people you're dealing with. All the people that are around me don't see these things as belonging in the past. This is the life they live. It's not about going back into anything. This is their ways of life on a daily basis. But I totally appreciate also that there are millions of people who think about these our indigenous ways as some past, because they are not living it. But if I may quickly just refer to an issue that I was thinking about concerning this book. It's such a lovely, lovely book. Very well produced with colors and everything. And one must congratulate Bookcraft for doing this kind of book, and also to encourage them to continue to produce books like this. I looked at the list of other titles here, and it's really quite impressive. When I say that, also, I have to say that Kofo Adeleke has done an incredible job. I looked at the translation, Koko, lyrics in Yoruba, with all of the beautiful critics. But then, it's not her fault that the very first impression that you get of the book is very badly placed in terms of that critics. That is not definitely what Kofo Adeleke gave them. They lost it because it says, Bata ni adun Koko. That's not what the author gave to the publisher, because if you go inside to page 18, you will see what the author gave to the publisher. Very beautifully done. And the publisher destroyed it, which and is the very first impression you get when you grab this book. It's unfortunate to those of us who hold this tradition as very important.
I'm so sorry that Mr. Olayebi didn't make it to his destination. He said that he was traveling and Wi-Fi, he couldn't Zoom from the car, but he would get there. But I'm sure there'll be other opportunities to do this. And any other issues that people want to talk about? Yes. Kim.
Yes, I just wanted to say something going back to, I really appreciate the idea of, the Orishas being seen as then and continuing and into the future. Because I just want to let you all know, because I'm from New Orleans and we have a tradition here of black masking, quote unquote, black masking Indians, but they make these handmade suits, and they're all individually beaded. I don't know if you all have ever seen them, but the suits of men can be up to 150 pounds. They all have to be handmade. But there is a thread running through this tradition. It's a 100-year-old tradition where the Orishas are now being seen on the streets of New Orleans in Black Mardi Gras, because people are making suits in honor of the Orisha. In 2018, we had 2 distinct styles of suits to Shango. And so I just wanted to just mention that, as the people in the diaspora in New Orleans still remember the gods.
Yes. I don't want to overuse my position as chair, but on the issue of Orisha, spirituality, and culture, I am a sociologist. And so one of the things I see about the way we talk about spiritual tradition is actually part of the problem, I think, is also the approach, because it's so ingrained in so many of us through our so-called education to think of these things as passe. And of course, Christianity, Islam, and the whole question of demonization of the indigenous people have written about that. But I think part of the approach is that sometimes we miss the extent to which Yoruba spirituality, Yoruba world sense is part of everyday culture of everybody, even those who call themselves Muslim or Christians, is part of the life. Take Ori, for example, the concept of Ori. We all use it all the time. Eku Orire, with Adire, I think there was Ori Mikwe. We take Ori to mean head, but then if you think about it, in the Yoruba tradition, it's still harking back to our everyday spirituality. And that's just an example. So whether people are in the church or in the mosque, Ori is central. In fact, the other day I was asking somebody, I said on Facebook, whenever anybody does anything, you say congratulations. And oftentimes these days, I want to say it in Yoruba. And sometimes I say Eku Orire, but I hold back, because I sometimes feel that Eku Orire is too heavy duty for what they've just done. And that at one level, we also should recognize, I guess, the secular hand. So I said, maybe I should just say Ekushe. So I'm sharing this just to invite us to open up our minds and to be more conversant at the degree to which our cultural consciousness is still a part of us. But the problem is, why is it that people deny it? Why is it that they don't see it? And why is it that they attribute the best of us to something else? And I think that that is part of what Mama Nike's story illustrates. One of the things I'm missing here, and it's not the fault of the author or anybody, I wish we had had one panelist that really places Mama Nike within the culture. To what extent does she reflect certain values, certain senses, and certain approaches within the culture? I think that's a big part of it. We have 3 minutes more. Mama Nike wants to talk. Did I see your hand? Oh, okay. I thought you wanted to say something more.
Yeah, no, I was just thanking. Okay, you need to.
Oh, okay, no, you don't have to say anything. I thought I saw your hand.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
No,
that's fine. So we
you.
have a couple more minutes. And if anybody wants to say something, or maybe the last word should go to the author. Are you talking? Are you?
There's probably, there's an aspect of Yannicke's work that I really think needs to be elaborated on. And that is her curatorial, international curatorial activity. She has promoted so many artists, and without having any formal curatorial training, she has been a curator for decades. And she talked about curating women's art in her gallery. But as a matter of fact, she has curated both male and female artists. And I don't think there is any male artist in Nigeria that would feel that she has been partial in terms of presentation, even though nowadays we tend to emphasize the importance of focusing on promoting the female voice. I have benefited tremendously from the incredible curatorial work that Nike Okundaye has done.
I would just like to add something to that. One of the things that I think is extremely unique about Mama Nike, in terms of the way that she has actually helped people, is that she started helping people even before she became a huge success. And that is very, very unusual, because usually people wait for a bit until they are established before they sort of, put out a helping hand to other people. But right from the beginning, when she was very, very young, she always wanted to share whatever she had, whatever opportunity she had with other people. And a lot of people are saying to her, why don't you just concentrate on your own career? Start building your own career up. But I think it's something that's really unique about her, the fact that right from the beginning, she wanted to share opportunities with so many people. And that is what she has done. And that's what she continues to do. And she's always looking for new opportunities, not for herself, but for other people.
Okay, before they cut us off, I want to seize this opportunity to thank Mama Nike for being and all the works that she does and continues to do for the country, for other artists, and for all of us. I also want to thank Kofo Adeleke for doing a superb job of representing Mama Nike in this wonderful book. You all should get it. And then I want to thank the distinguished panelists who have raised a lot of issues. And I'm actually thinking that, well, maybe next year at the LSA, we're going to have another aspect of Mama Nike panel. I think it probably, she's a national icon. It probably should be part of our LSA processes every year, because this is important and it's about Lagos too. Thank you so much, all of you, for attending and for listening to the distinguished panel. And we will see you next year, God willing, at Lagos Studies Association. And we'll all...
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody. Such an interesting panel. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, mommy.
Bye-bye. Sorry. Time.
Odabo. Eat lunch, yo. Before you go. On Sunday, will you like to come on Sunday to come and have lunch?
I'm coming.
But you know what? I'll be there next week.
I'm coming for lunch. I'm coming for lunch.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
It was a brilliant session.
Yes, it was.